Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast with your host, Michael Sherlock. We all have potential, but sometimes we need inspiration to get us to our peak performance. Whether you are starting out in your career, ready to move up the corporate ladder, or taking the leap into entrepreneurship, Michael's guests provide powerful tools and resources to shock your potential. Shock Your Potential is a global professional development training company committed to your unique journey. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com. Listen in to today's expert.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Shock Your Potential. I am your host, Michael Sherlock, and all month long for the month of May, we are being very mindful, not only of ourselves, but, really to take stock of what we've learned in the last year and maybe make sure that we are taking better care of ourselves as we move forward. And my guest today is going to talk about this from, her perspective, which I think is going to really challenge us on a number of levels to really transform our thinking. So Ora Nadrich is a pioneering mindfulness expert. She's an international keynote speaker and coach, and she's the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. That's why I thought about the transformation part. Oprah Winfrey's confidant and New York Times bestselling author Marianne Williamson has said, "When she speaks, I listen. And when she writes, I read it. And when she gives advice, I heed it." Or is a sought-out expert in the fields of mindfulness, transformational thinking, and self-discovery, which is really what this series is all about, knowing more about ourselves and then taking creative and positive action with it. And she's created and popularized her highly effective Says Who method, which allows her clients to ask simple questions that result in profound personal and professional transformation. And isn't that a great question? Like, says who? Sometimes we follow things we probably don't have to if we really asked ourselves the question behind. She's also the author of Says Who: How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever, and another book called Live True: A Mindfulness Guide to Authenticity. She was named one of the 100 best mindfulness books of all times for that book by Book Authority. And she's also been featured in Fast Company, NBC News, Women's Health Magazine, Reader's Digest, which is one I've always wanted to be in, Yahoo Health, and Success Magazine. And she's a frequent Huffington Post contributor and one of their global leading experts on mindfulness. So, Ora, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure. I can't wait to dive down into more about what you do. Mindfulness is a really important factor for my life. And I got, I guess, really laser-like focused on it about 7 years ago, a little bit, aware of it a little bit beyond that, but it has definitely made a difference in my life. I know that people are much more open to the concept of mindfulness, meditation, transformational thinking, hypnosis, different things that they wouldn't have been maybe 10, 15 years ago, which I think is really bodes well for us. But so I can't wait to pick your brain on so many things. But first, I hit the highlights of your bio. Tell us a little bit more about you and your business and how you help people to shock their potential.
Well, as you said, I am a mindfulness practitioner. My books are really about mindfulness. Says Who, my first book, really is also about mindfulness. And I created a cognitive questioning method. I love the way you said "says who." It had a little bit of that sassiness in it that I hope people are asking themselves, which is to question the negative and fear-based thoughts that we might be quick to accept and believe are true. So that took me more into a deep dive because my work really is essentially about present moment awareness. That means being aware of our thoughts. What are our thoughts telling us? What purpose do our thoughts, offer us basically? And to go into the area of mindfulness and the authentic self, which is what mindfulness is about with Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity. And my institute, the IFTT, the Institute for Transformational Thinking. So I think when you put all of those together, you really get a sense of what I'm about, what my work is about. It's about really being in present moment awareness with our thoughts, our actions, our deeds, and to really be showing up in the moments of our lives as who we really are. So all of my work really comes out of the Institute. And, I say, changing your life one thought at a time, which can ultimately reverberate out into the world. And if we all did that, imagine the changes we could create in the world.
It is so true. I was interviewing someone several months ago, and it's terrible that I can't remember who it was because I need to go back and figure out what guest it was. But she made a statement that said, if we actually listen to the thoughts, I was going back to when you said, questioning the negative and fear based thoughts in our head. If you could really go in and listen to some of the things that we say to ourselves. And she said, if you really listened to it and you played it back, you would be so shocked because you would never say those things to another human being, but we say them to ourselves in our head.
It is so true. And that's exactly what I say. If someone came up to you or I today and said to us the things that our inner critic may say to us, which really can range from, caustic, unkind, insensitive, and downright abusive. Okay.
Yes.
If somebody walked up to us and literally said, you're this, 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 and this, first of all, we'd be shocked and horrified. And I would
Yes.
like to think we would quickly defend ourselves. And
Yeah.
yet, what I say and says who, we are so quick to accept our negative and fear-based thoughts readily, like we just should accept them. Oh, well,
Yeah.
since I'm telling myself that, I guess it's true. Hence, says who?
Yeah.
Challenge those thoughts, question those thoughts. This has really blown a lot of people's minds with my work because they'll say to me, Ora, I never thought to question my thoughts. That's not even
Mm.
something I thought I should do, which really speaks volumes and how quick we are to accept the inner dialogue that we tell ourselves.
Hmm. And it gets in our way, so my company name is Shock Your Potential. The podcast is called Shock Your Potential. And I always talk about it as almost like, and I laugh when I say it, it's almost like, when you touch an electrified fence, not an intense one, just one of those that has the little low level, voltage in it, and you touch it and it makes you jump back. And it tells you something. It doesn't harm you, but it makes you really hyper aware of where you are and what you just about walked over and what you were testing. And so that little jolt, increases your attention span. And so my belief is so many of it, we all have a potential within us, and we talk about it all the time about you have such great potential, but why don't people really move forward to achieve their full potential, whether it's personally, professionally, with their dream, their whatever it is. And my thought is that until you have that little jolt, that's something that raises your awareness to the point where you say, oh, I need to pay attention to this, because if I don't, I'm not going to achieve my potential. And I think that's where a lot of our headspace gets caught up. And when we have that self-talk, that negative talk, or that self-doubt, it it until we are aware of it, it just constantly keeps us in that state of just under our potential, or maybe not even close to our potential.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, even the word shock, like what do we need to really wake ourselves up? What do we
Mhm.
really need in order for us to, you know, be aware of things like our negative inner talk, which really undermines and sabotages our lives and definitely doesn't help us reach our goals. The beauty of mindfulness, which is the practice of being present and aware in the moment of which you are in. That means I have an awareness of what thoughts I'm thinking. Do I like them? As to quote some of the Says Who questions, does this thought work for me? Do I like
Mm.
this thought? How does this thought make me feel better? I say this is the most valuable real estate is our minds. And we're willing
Mhm.
to, house thoughts, let thoughts occupy our mind that serve no useful purpose whatsoever for our well-being. So you get mindfulness, which is being cognizant of the thoughts that you have, a practice that really doesn't require very much of us other than to be present. Okay, I'm in the moment. What am I aware of in this moment? I'm aware of this thought that just popped up in my head and told me I'm unworthy. You know,
Mhm.
well, I have a choice here to accept it or to challenge it. And what I say in Live True and Says Who, I have a technique called the release and replace technique. How about replacing that negative thought with its positive counterpart? There are skill sets and tools and methods that we can use that are relatively easy. I say my books are user friendly. I like to say I don't dumb down so that people can use them, but I don't know how much easier it can get for people to say, hey, I'm ready to like not be commandeered by these negative thoughts that I'm actually allowing to dominate my mind. So
Mm-hmm.
don't wait to get shocked, or don't wait to get hurt or devastated or broadsided. Catch yourself early enough to say, I'm empowered and I have the ability to decide to literally pick and choose the thoughts that are working for me favorably.
I love that. And that there is so much power in that I can pick and choose. It kind of, from a selfish personal perspective, as you were talking, I was thinking about a couple years ago, I had a very stressful situation. All of us have stressful situations. And during that stressful situation, it was very hard to get out of my own head about what that said about me, or, what it made me think about myself, or how my stress and anxiety, reacted to it. And yesterday, I had to deal with an issue that we thought was resolved with this issue. And it's really actually a completely very minor issue. It will not it will not harm me. It will not put me back into any, horrible situation. But my first response of even having to deal with one little piece that was unresolved, that will probably be resolved in one phone call and one email, immediately I had this sense of panic, like, oh my gosh, I can't go back there. And then I sat for a few minutes and went, okay, Sherlock, which when I call myself Sherlock, that I'm, giving myself a talking to. And I'm like, okay, Sherlock, take a few deep breaths and just separate yourself from this again. This is not a part of you. This is not going to have long-term repercussions. This is not a stressful overall situation. And I did well through the day until I went to bed last night. And then as I was laying down, and your brain is starting to calm down, it tried to pull itself back up. And I said, nope, I'm going to sleep well tonight. I refuse to let this cause me any grief anymore for my sleep. And somehow I did it. And I woke up this morning really proud of myself, because I don't think I've ever, before going to bed, made a conscious decision like that. Because otherwise I would have, even if I would have pushed it down, it would have surfaced throughout the night if I woke up or rolled over. And I really didn't think about it until just we were talking now. And then I went, oh yeah, I forgot to write the email and make the phone call. Oops.
Good for you. That's such a great story to really let us know what happens when a thought takes us over. And when you were expressing that, it really made me think of the chapter in my book, Says Who, the something to worry about thoughts. I mean, I
Ah,
literally have a chapter called The Something to Worry About Thoughts. Look, when I talk about positive thoughts versus negative thoughts, I know we're not going to have positive thoughts 24/7. That thought's going to come up, those automatic thoughts, a negative thought, a fear-based thought. What we have to ask ourselves is, what do we want to do about it? Okay, it's
yeah,
not like we're never going to think a negative thought or a fear-based thought again.
right.
You made a conscious decision to say, hey, sorry, I want to get a good night's sleep. So sorry, thought, I'm not really going to allow you to disrupt my night's sleep. I'm making a conscious decision to whether put that thought on pause, or,
Mhm.
what I like to say is use my release and replace technique. And the replace of that thought would be, I don't have time for that thought right now. I need to get a good night's sleep. Do you
Yeah,
know? And the thing
yeah.
about something like the something to worry about thoughts chapter, I really go into a lot of how, the mind is a trickster. There's something there's a Buddhist term called the monkey mind.
Oh
And if we
yeah,
think
yeah.
of a monkey mind jumping from tree to tree and branch to branch, it's a restless animal. So the mind is a restless thing, and it's looking for some kind of problem to solve. And if we allow for that, we're going to stay in worry. Well, what does worry really do for us? All it does is create more worry. So at a
Yes.
time of worrying, I like to say, what can I do for myself right now that's going to help me ameliorate my worry and be useful? I mean, we are going to have times that we're going to worry. We're going to worry about ourselves. We're going to worry about a loved one. I say in that chapter, maybe you can think of a visualization for that person. Think of surrounding them in white light. Say a prayer for them. If I'm just worrying incessantly, what am I doing that's helpful? There's nothing
Hmm.
helpful about worrying. So this is the
No.
whole idea, the whole concept of what can we do? How can we work with our thoughts so that they are, I say, your thoughts need to be your cheering squad, not your hecklers. You know,
Right.
they really need to be helping you.
I love that. I'm writing that down. Your thoughts need to be your cheering squad and not your heckler.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, what good does any of that do? We know it. We've all been at the effect of it. Do you
Yeah.
know? And we know it just does nothing. Again, useful thought, useless thought. We
Yeah.
have a choice in that moment. And I get it. We're all going to get plugged in. We're going to react. We're going to get triggered. And when you even described focusing on the breath, which I talk about a lot as a meditation teacher, bring your focus and awareness back to your breath just by taking a couple of deep breaths in and out. You're going to feel some kind of release in the body. Do you
Yes.
know? And instead of obsessing on that thought, you've put your focus on your breath. Okay, let me just focus on my breath, even if it means connecting to the rising and falling of the breath. Well, I can tell you, you're not going to be thinking of that thought and focusing on your breath simultaneously. They're going to cancel each other out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing to me once I realized, just how taking a couple deep breaths, what a difference that made to me physiologically, that helped me mentally. I love it when people say, "Oh, I've tried to meditate, I can't meditate." And I'm like, yeah, okay, first of all, yeah,
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I don't
Okay.
even know what to say.
You know what? You know you can say to them, but can you breathe? Are you breathing?
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to sit down for 20 minutes on a meditation pillow and
Right.
chant. I'm
Right.
talking about, pause, just pause, connect to
Yeah.
your breath. Don't get caught up in the automatic, on the hamster wheel of the thinking mind that could literally prevent you from sleeping. So you took charge. Do you
Yeah.
know?
And it really is, it gives you a different sense of empowerment. And when I look back over the 7 years that I've been really focused on meditation, and I don't mean I don't sit on a pillow and do that either. I do a lot of guided meditations, but I also do a lot of just walking and being aware, things that I've learned as I've done this for a few years. It's amazing to me how I sleep. It's amazing to me how I process stress. Because even when I had this a few years ago, the way I processed stress, which was horrible in some sense, was so much better than the 10-year before Michael, who would have been curled up in a ball, in the corner.
Right.
And it's, when you look to see how just trying to control those, especially the worry. And I think the worry is such a great, and before we'll take a break here in a minute, but I know that so many people this last year have been consumed by a lot of worry and a lot of what if. And I think that as we come out of it, my gut is that we're not all of a sudden just going to wake up and go, okay, everything's wonderful again. I mean, a year worth of worry at this level and what if at this level, it's going to have some long-term repercussions. I appreciate everything that you've been talking about so far. Obviously, not only a big firm believer of this, but I've seen the difference it's made in my life. So right before we went to break, I was talking about how the reason, one of the reasons for this series is that I've seen how all of us have been negatively impacted by the last year. Now, there's been positives. I've had some positives, but no matter what, no matter which way you cut it, I don't think there's a person in this world who hasn't had a sleepless night, at least one, and many, many more likely, or moments worrying about the what ifs in the worlds. And just because more and more of us are getting inoculated now, I think the worry is there's still going to be a lot of worry there, or lots of fear, lots of things that hang, hold over. So I'm asking each of my guests to, just give me a little bit of, your thoughts on, how do we transition to this through this time? How do we take good care of ourselves mentally and emotionally and go through it, not trying to all of a sudden be brave, re-entering the world again?
Michael, I think that's such an important question. And I think, as we know, last year with the pandemic, it was an unprecedented time in our
Mhm.
lifetime. None of us could ever have anticipated something like that happening globally. I mean, it's even hard to wrap our heads around what we experienced globally as a collective. As a mindfulness teacher, I've written a lot of articles about it. I've been interviewed a lot around mindfulness during such a difficult time. The reason why I like to present mindfulness as a very helpful tool to use at a time like this is worry is real. I don't want to say that any of the emotions that we feel are not real, even at a time when there's a lot to worry about. So that's real. But what we want to do is we want to be, again, aware of how can we work with the worry that is genuine. I'm talking about people that have really, really been hit hard, or to varying degrees, whether you've lost your business, whether you're really in crisis financially, whether your families have been torn apart. There, the list goes on and on about what has taken place
Yep.
because of this extremely difficult time. Mindfulness is really the awareness of what can I do right now that's going to help me? Meaning that when you go into fear and worry, what does that really do? It creates more worry, more anxiety, more depression, and you can literally spiral down, which can be very, very dangerous. And what I like to say to people, this is a time to beef up self-care in whatever way you can. And for those people that have felt very alone during this time, we mustn't make light of that. It's a time to reach out. It's a time to really reach out to anybody that you can. And I want to say this, we are not alone. We are all going through the same thing to varying degrees. But specifically to utilizing mindfulness as a tool, I want to say this, and I did it a lot last year when COVID was at its all-time high. So many people were in a heightened fear and fight and flight state of fear because of, oh my God, am I going to get COVID? Oh my God, are my loved ones going to get COVID? You're in this literal unnatural state of fight or flight. What I really propose is to have that self-talk that is like, no, I don't have COVID. And I hope that I won't get COVID. And if I were to get COVID, I believe that I will be okay. And if a loved one of mine gets COVID, I will hope and pray that they will be okay. What are the things that we can say to ourselves so that we're not in a heightened panic state? So there's that. And that again circles back to the release and replace. Try and be aware of your inner self-talk. If you're in the future, and mindfulness is the practice of being in the present, if your thoughts start to go into the future, catch it. Oh my God, what if this isn't going to be okay? What if I'm going to lose this? What if this is going to happen? And again, I want to say those thoughts are real. It's okay to have those thoughts, but what you want to do is you want to work with those thoughts so that you can come up with a game plan for yourself, so that you can take care of yourself. What can I do right now that's going to calm me down? Can I meditate? Should I go take a bath? Let me go take a walk. Let me go watch the sunrise or the sunset. What can I do that's going to help soothe me, comfort me, reach out to someone where I can feel the support that I need? Think of it along the lines of what can I do that can help me right now? And when you catch yourself going into the future or lamenting about the past, because that again is really the essence of mindfulness, is being in the present moment with the total awareness, catch yourself and bring yourself back into the moment and ask yourself, what can I do right now that's going to help me? What can I do right now that can help someone else that's in crisis or suffering? What can I do right now that's going to beef up my self-care? What can I suggest to someone else who needs more self-care? We really need to bring ourselves into a solution-oriented state of mind and be able to get ourselves out of the future and the what ifs or what might or could happen, and be with the present moment of right now again. And how can you help yourself in the moment of now?
Yeah. And I don't know how many times in the last year I have found myself quoting the serenity prayer. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that kind of sums up, there are things that we may need to do. So having the courage to do them, but to understand that there's things that we can't do anything about. So how can I accept that? But knowing the difference between the two is, I really like that, how you summed up, keeping your thoughts in the present, not allowing it to go in the future and the what ifs, and not lamenting about the past. It really keeps you grounded in what can I control today? And most of that is, there's certain things we can control, but there's a lot of things we can't. And how do we just keep focused on this moment the best we can?
Absolutely. The way in which we can give ourselves the support that we all need right now, or help support someone else who's going through a very hard time.
Yeah.
Not making light of the fact that this is a challenging time. This is serious. And again, my work is not about pretending that you don't have these thoughts. As a matter of fact, allow them to come up. I say, allow for those thoughts to come up. Look at them, be with them. And now think of ways in which you can work with those thoughts so that you're not at the effect of them, because it can be extremely torturing to just have the
Mm,
mind constantly, I'm not going to be okay. This isn't going to be okay. You just spin out when that happens, and you
yeah.
want to catch it. You want to bring it back. And again, think of what you can do that's solution oriented as opposed to really being in the worry zone, if you will.
Well, I know that with myself, it's interesting. My husband and I have been together about 11 years, and he's the first person in my life in this role that I've ever been able to share some of the things that go through my head that are the negative self-talk. Or so I've struggled with depression at various points of my life, and I've dealt with anxiety, a lot of things that a lot of people do, but I'd never before had the courage to tell someone in my life this way, in these, in clear words. And I remember it was April, sometime in April, last year, and Dr. Burke, or Burkus or whatever, Burke, I think is Burke, was had just said on national news, "This is going to be the worst week of the pandemic." Of course, what did we know then? And she said, "If you don't have to go to the grocery store this week, don't go." And I really fixated on that. Like it just, we had been very careful. We were doing, everything, according to everything we needed to do. But I said to my husband, I said, "We have plenty of food in the house for the next week. We're not going to the store." Cause I told him, I said, "This is what she said. This really scares me." And he said, "Well, that's okay. You don't need to go. I'll go." And I said, "No, I can't have you go. I will worry about you going. And it's not about you making me sick. It's about, I am terrified for this week." And I needed to get through that week before I said, "Okay, we survived that week now." And it was really good because he said, "Okay, tell me what you're feeling." He goes, "I won't go if you don't want me to go, let's talk through it." And it felt really good to say those words out loud, because the Michael of years prior would have just had that, recording going through her head and just smiled as he went to the grocery store, and then not slept for the 7 days, worrying that there was going to, there, he always laughs that everything in my, inner dialogue ends in death. Like everything ends in death, and you die. And this happens, and you die. You know, the plane hits turbulence and you die. And so as he helps me to get through that, he's like, "Is this going to be a statement that ends in death?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah, I mean, that's where the mind goes. That's a perfect example, Michael, of like worst case scenario thinking. Do you
Yes.
know? And that is really going back to the worry, sort of like looping, if
Yeah.
you will. And I think the way in which you described how you communicated with your husband, we really need to do this. We really need to be able to listen to each other during this time. And by the way, we're all experiencing this differently. You know,
Yes.
our loved ones might not be feeling exactly what we're feeling in that moment in time. So the way in which we're communicating to each other, another partner might have said to their partner, "Oh, come on, you're being a worry wart.
Right.
It's fine for me to go to the market. It's just fine. Don't worry." And like you said, you would have been completely taken over by worry. So when
Yeah.
we really communicate to our friends, partners, loved ones, listen, I really want to tell you how I feel, which by the way, I really encourage people to do that. Share
Mhm.
how you feel. It's really a time right now more than ever. Even when we go back to whatever we're going to go back to,
Yep.
okay, this is a time to really share how you're feeling. And I want to say the importance of that is really about the fact that we've really grown very polarized. That's
Mhm.
one thing I've noticed, is that there's a lot of different opinions, beliefs, thoughts around all this. So it's really important for us to be able to communicate and say, "Hey, this is how I feel. And you may not agree with me. That's
Right.
okay. But can we really share our feelings, our opinions, our beliefs about this and work together?"
Yeah.
I want to really emphasize that around mindfulness, because I really feel this is a time where we need to work together more than ever before. We're
I
in this
agree.
together. We are.
I agree. And I can't tell you how just being able to tell him that so clearly changed how I communicated through the rest of the year. I mean, I still had points in time where I worried about things, especially when I went and took one trip to see my mom. But we communicated with him. And so then my anxiety about it was so much less, because I could say it out loud. I could say, "I am afraid of this. I am concerned about but then it also led me to points that I wasn't as concerned with. And that was great. But it was interesting. Flash forward a year later, and I'm sitting there getting my, first Moderna shot. And it was amazing to me. I was very happy to have it. I haven't been overly nervous the last few months, but I'll tell you, the next 3 hours, I felt like this huge weight off me. I didn't realize how much underlying tension I still had about it until I got that first shot. And then I'm like, I could hardly function that day, not because I didn't feel well, but because I think finally there was a sense of, oh, now I've done something. I've done something that's another positive move forward. And as we go through, I think everybody, like you said, everybody's going to experience this and the next couple years all differently. But the more we talk about it and the more we take time to recognize where we are in the moment, I think the better we're all going to get through it.
Absolutely. And the way we can really offer up, sharing our ideas and the way in which we're, going back to self-care, Michael,
Hmm.
be able to share the ways in which we are supporting ourselves, the way in which we are really taking care of self-care, and be able to share that, I think is really helpful. Because again, we've been in an unnatural state. We've been in this fight or flight state for, I mean, it's so unnatural to be in that state. That's why we need all these tips and tools and skill sets as we possibly can to get through it. And, I don't think we should sugarcoat it. We still got a road ahead of us here.
Yeah.
We're in uncharted territory. We are. So better that we, strengthen up here and we are able to learn ways in which I say navigate the waters. As we know about the sea, sometimes it is really tumultuous and the waters are choppy. And yes, they've been choppier than we've ever seen them before. And then sometimes the sea is calm. We need to be really good navigators. We really need to be good sailors. This is a
Yeah.
life journey. And it's going to take us into all sorts of places we've never been before. So this is a good time to ask ourselves, who am I? What am I made of? And that's another thing this time has taught, I think, many of us what we're made of.
I love that. And although as you were talking about the tumultuous sea and being good sailors, I thought how many people are like, I got seasick.
Thought I was going overboard a lot of times.
I want off the boat.
Put a safety vest on, I know what's good about it is, like I say to my friends, isn't it great that sometimes we can laugh about it
Yeah.
because we need some of that relief, when
Hmm.
it gets too serious. And I also want to mention one of the self-care things: please turn off the TV,
Mm.
social media, news. Don't be watching that 24/7.
Mm-mm.
Get your news, get your information, whatever you need just to check in and know what's going on. But please don't park yourself there.
No, I know, not at all. In fact, it's funny. My husband and I used to watch the news at night when we'd have dinner. And now instead, we've been watching we're almost done, the entire series of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Which if you want to watch a show that talks about, being open to different cultures and ethnicities and ideas, I mean, every time I'm like, this is the world we need to live in. I want to go live on the Enterprise. And my husband's like, you can't. All right, come back to Earth.
That is so true, Michael. It really is. There is that habit, of like, okay, let's turn on the news. It's nighttime, it's dinner time. And you don't realize how that seeps into your subconscious,
Yeah.
and they literally affect the rest of the night. And by the way, going back to your sleep story, affect your night's sleep, affect your dream states. There's so many
Yeah.
things that are disruptive. Don't we want to kind of lighten our load, people?
Yeah.
As especially at nighttime when we're trying to really transition out of our day, we really want to. I encourage people to create a more of a calm environment for themselves, to
Yeah.
be able to do things like, watch a show that gives you pleasure, put on nice music,
Yes.
read books that are uplifting, take a bath, light some candles, put some
Yeah.
aromatherapy, essential oils in there. Nighttime is a time to start to bring the energy into a much more calm frequency, not to keep
Yes.
it up here. You don't want that.
I agree. Or I think we could talk all day. Thank you. I know we'll have all your contact information on the show notes, but just in case somebody wants to look you up right now because they can't wait to find out more about you, your books, and all the ways that you work with your clients, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for having me. I really enjoyed our talk and our time together. The best way to reach me is my website, Ora Nadrich, Nadrich, Ora.com. Got everything there.
Very good. And before we go, what are your last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
I would say start today with an awareness of your inner dialogue. try and keep it positive and supportive of your well-being. And if or when a thought comes up that tries to take you out of the moment, gently, if you can, bring yourself into the present moment and tell yourself something positive, loving, and nurturing.
I love it. Ora, thank you so much for being with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you as a guest today.
Thank you again.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com, including details on Michael's 2 best-selling books. Tell me more, how to ask the right questions and get the most out of your employees, and sales mixology, why the most potent sales and customer experiences follow a recipe for success. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.